I now wanted to talk about Yemen again, one of the most overlooked countries in the world, one of the most important countries in the Middle East vis-a-vis national security. And I also believe this is one of the most underreported stories of the week. So let's move on to Yemen, which could be the match that ignites at least a regional war across the Middle East. Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthis announced on Monday that they were imposing a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia, a move that could launch the price of gas way past where it is right now. Let's take a look at this clip from Good Morning America.
This morning, new fears the war with Iran could be expanding, with the Iran-backed Houthis from Yemen now threatening to block Saudi oil from transiting another key waterway, this one connecting the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean. With traffic in the Strait of Hormuz already slowing to a crawl, cutting off the Red Sea could cause oil prices to spike even further, and gas prices now more than $4 a gallon as well.
I'm proud to say I called this a week ago. Listen, one of the goals with this show is to predict the news before anybody else reports it. That was a big example. I'm one of the few people inside or outside government that really follows Yemen closely. Check this out. I think this is just nuts. This is what the Houthis are actually broadcasting to Saudi ships on open channels. Listen to this.
Force calling you on channel 16. According to the decision of Yemeni armed forces in the date of July 202026, we warn all ships belonging to Saudi enemy to proceed via the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. In case of non-compliance of Yemeni armed forces decision, those ships will be in our target. Over.
This requires a little bit of explanation. Let's go back to 1990, August the 2nd. Iraqi troops invade and occupy Kuwait. The Kuwaiti ruling family flees to Taif, Saudi Arabia. It just so happened that Yemen and Cuba were non-permanent members of the United Nations Security Council that year. And so Secretary of State James Baker went to the Yemenis and the Cubans, more the Yemenis, and said, listen, we are at a historic crossroads. You have to do the right thing, and you have to vote yes on the United Nations Security Council's resolution to use force to kick the Iraqis out of Kuwait. The whole world is on our side. You need to be on the right side too. And the Yemenis voted no. The Yemenis decided to throw their lot in with Saddam Hussein. There were 2 million Yemeni workers in Saudi Arabia at that time. Every last one of them was expelled from Saudi Arabia, and the world has never been the same. I flew into Yemen on my very first trip to the country in June of 1991. I flew to Sana'a, the capital, from Jeddah along the Red Sea coast of Saudi Arabia. For 20 minutes before the plane landed, you could see people living in cardboard boxes or in makeshift lean-tos, no roofs, tents. 2 million people thrown out of Saudi Arabia on the same day. These are people that can't afford shoes, that can't afford food for their children and water. To make matters worse, as recently as the late 1970s, Yemen was a net food exporter, and they decided to stop growing food so they could replace all the food with something called qat, Q-A-T. Qat is like coca, but not as potent. They chew it all day long, and it's a stimulant. It's like drinking a pot of coffee. Well, now you see people sitting in these little, they look like tree houses with old rifles guarding their qat. Their children don't have food, but there's plenty of qat to chew. Well, then all these 2 million workers were expelled from Saudi Arabia. There's no food, there's no water, there are no jobs, there's no housing. I've been to Yemen 5 times over the years, and every single time I go, it's worse than the previous time. For decades, the country was led by a president named Ali Abdullah Saleh. Saleh was close to Saudi Arabia. He was also close to the United States, but then he split with us on this Saddam Hussein vote. Immediately, a Yemeni civil war started. And it wasn't just, the good guys versus the bad guys. It was a multi-part civil war. And you have Al-Qaeda fighting as part of that civil war. Osama bin Laden's family originated in Yemen, in the eastern part of Yemen, in an area called the Hadramut. Hadramut comes from two Arabic words, Khadr, which means vegetation. Maut means dead. It says it's called dead vegetation because it's so dry, literally nothing can live there. Animals don't even live there. Well, that's where Al-Qaeda was based, in Yemen, in this no man's land that nobody else could go to. They began attacking the central government. In South Yemen, the former communists began attacking the central government. And the Shia Muslims in northwestern Yemen began attacking the central government. Ali Abdullah Saleh fled to Saudi Arabia and took refuge there. The Saudis reluctantly gave it to him, but somebody was able to sneak into the palace that he was living in, and they planted a bomb, and it quite literally blew his head off. So Ali Abdullah Saleh no longer exists. The last time I went to Yemen was in 2011, and I had gone there from Djibouti, which, as I mentioned in the last episode, is just about 9 miles across the water. Something called the Bab el-Mandeb, where the Horn of Africa almost meets the southwestern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, right there. And when I got into a cab in Sana'a, I said to the driver, "So how are things going?" And he said, "Oh, things are rough right now." He said the Houthis are attacking the capital city. And I said, "Yeah, I've read about that. It's terrible." And he said, "They're using drones against us." And I said, "The Houthis don't have drones." And then I thought to myself, but we do. In 2011, we were already involved in a war in Yemen in 2011, and nobody knew about it. Thank you, Barack Obama. Another American secret war. So now here we are all these years later. The Houthis have overthrown the Yemeni government. They have taken control of the Yemeni government. Even if they don't control the whole of Yemen, they control the most important parts of Yemen. So what are they threatening here specifically? They are specifically threatening to blow up ships coming in and out of Saudi Arabia, which really is Jeddah. Most of those ships are oil tankers, but a good number of them are cargo ships that have come through the Suez Canal and are going to transit the Bab el-Mandeb. If the Yemenis do this, it's going to force ships to go, instead of going through the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb, to go all the way around Africa, which adds 30 days to the trip and billions of gallons of fuel. So we're talking about the entire planet going into a recession and having to fight what's going to be out of control inflation because this little group of bandits has closed the Bab el-Mandeb. This is going to be a very serious thing. So how did the Saudis respond? Well, they essentially can't. I mean, there's a Saudi Navy for what that's worth, but the Saudi military has been fighting the Houthis for more than a decade, and they lost. The Houthis won. Another thing that I learned when I was living in Saudi Arabia is that even though the Saudis, economically, geographically, physically dominate the Yemenis, and especially the Houthis are fierce fighters, and they're not afraid of anybody, but the Saudis are afraid of them. And so this is going to be a serious problem for the Saudis. Let's talk for a second, though, about the Israeli factor. You might remember 6, 8, 10 months ago, whatever it is, the Israeli government recognized an area of Somalia called Somaliland as an independent country. It's not an independent country, even though many of us, including me, wish that it was. It's not an independent country. The Israelis are the only country in the world that recognize Somaliland as independent. That's great for Somaliland. There's an Israeli embassy now in Somaliland. So what do the Israelis get out of it? They get an air base. They get an air base that's about 100 miles from the Houthis. And so if Israeli shipping is threatened in the Bab el-Mandeb, they are going to unleash F-35s and attempt to blow the Houthis back to the Stone Age. That's been tried in the past. It doesn't work. I think what we're going to end up seeing here is crimes against humanity. We're going to see the port of Hodeidah bombed repeatedly. And the last time the Israelis did this, they bombed schools, they bombed hospitals. And the Saudis, they're just as guilty. Schools, hospitals, children, private homes, it makes no difference. They just bombed everything. I think we're going to see more of that. I want to add one other thing, two other things. Number one, if the Saudis are attacked, the Bahrainis are going to jump in because the Bahrainis and the Saudis are joined at the hip. And if the Bahrainis jump in, the Emiratis probably will jump in. Now, the Emiratis appear to have negotiated their own private one-to-one deal with Iran. We'll give you $3 billion in cash if you stop bombing us. And the Iranians stopped. But the Saudis and the Emiratis, even though they were on different sides of the fight in Yemen, if the Saudis were endangered, I think the Emiratis would jump in on the side of the Saudis. And then we have a full-fledged regional war. You have Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Jordan, and Israel against Iran and Yemen. Qatar's going to try to remain neutral. Oman's going to try to remain neutral, but this is going to be a full-fledged regional war. I want to add one other thing. Back in 2010, I was working on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and a local think tank asked me if I would participate in a debate on Yemen. I said, sure, why not? And so, I generally never prepare for these things. I figure if I don't know these issues by now, I'm never going to know them. I'm supposed to be an expert, so I just have to rely on my own knowledge and my own background. I go to this event on Capitol Hill having no idea that my debate is against Senator Susan Collins. So she's there with a whole army of aides, and she's got her notes, and she's reading her note cards, and I'm just sitting there on the stage, like looking at my watch and looking at the crowd and waving at people. And it comes time to debate. And I essentially said in the debate what I just told you, that the Yemenis are consistently underestimated, that they are scrappy and tough and mean and fierce fighters, and they are not afraid of anybody. And even though Saudi Arabia is bigger and richer and more powerful, that the Yemenis were going to win. And I said, the U.S. long said that it had no national interests in Yemen. Indeed, it has national interests. It's counterterrorism, counter-piracy, and open trade through the Bab el-Mandeb. Well, Senator Collins disagreed with me. Okay, that's fine. At the end, I got up, I shook her hand, and I went home. The next day, John Kerry, who was my boss, walks into my office and says, did you debate Senator Collins last night? And I said, I did. And if I may say so, I kicked her ass. He didn't think that was funny. And he just said to me, don't ever do that again. And then he walked out.